Rabbi Shmuley, I'm interrupting because you've now been speaking for 3 minutes.
One final point.
So Candace will get exactly the same amount of time. It's up to you, but it's an opening statement, right? And what I would say...
May I just say finally, if I may?
Well, if it's quick,
The biggest issue I have with Candace, to be honest, is that she claims to be a Christian. Candace, didn't Jesus say you're supposed to love your enemies? Is the love you show me that you call me filth twice on the last show that you did with Pierce a piece of filth? You're supposed to love your enemies. Is that turning the other cheek? And Pierce, you're an English gentleman. I've known you for many years. You allowed her to say that without even a piece of filth. When Jesus said that you're supposed to turn the other cheek, where have you ever turned the other cheek? When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, the arrogance, the nonstop attack against Jews, the demonization. If you are a Christian, then I am the second coming of Christ.
Okay, that's 4 minutes you've spoken to. And out of fairness, Candace, if you want to use 4 minutes to respond, you can. All I would note, Rabbi Shmuley, is you've spent 4 minutes personally attacking Candace Owens. I set this up as a debate about what is happening with the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. You've turned it all completely, immediately, into an ad hominem onslaught against Candace.
How could you possibly say that? You are speaking to a woman who says the Jews are a ring of demonic pedophiles, and you're saying that I have no right to defend my people. You know, Pierce, you have to stop this once and for all. There was nothing ad hominem at all.
All right.
When Candace says that the black community
you've had your say.
is a bunch of crybabies,
okay.
Everything I said was policy. I could not disagree more.
Candace will now get the same amount of time, if you wanted, Candace, to respond.
Thank you, Pierce. And I don't think I really do need to respond to the ad hominem attacks. I think actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said. And trying to screen that as a defense of black people. The black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America. They won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, you know, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing, and what we've always recognized, is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky, and their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus, we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief. And you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, those are the two opening statements. Rabbi Shmuley, let me ask you this. Where are we now with this war? Because it seems that the people inside Israel are now beginning to come after Prime Minister Netanyahu, angry that his mission to save the hostages is simply not working. We saw 6 more executed at the weekend. Obviously, that's on Hamas. But the relatives of other hostages are saying, for God's sake, bring back the hostages before it's too late. And there's no sign of any deal being done to do that. And there's a lot of pressure on Netanyahu. Is his mission statement failing?
Yes, I will answer that in just a moment. But Pierce, your guest just called me mentally unhinged. She called me filth twice on your show. You did not just say to her, Candace, can you stop the ad hominem attacks? Did I ever say anything? I stuck to policy. Can you at least just be fair and say that's unnecessary, Candace, or is this two against one?
Well, no. You spent 4 minutes lacerating her.
Calling me mentally unhinged, is that
You're sitting there to defend that charge.
Is that ad hominem?
You spent 4 minutes attacking her personally. She's perfectly entitled
Pierce,
to
with all
return
due
the
respect,
favor.
with all due respect, when one of your guests calls someone else filth, I think that you, as an English gentleman, should step in. But let me answer your question. No less, the only thing of Christ that Candace Owens has actually fulfilled comes from Matthew chapter 10, verse 35, where Jesus says, I've come to separate and create conflict between a woman and her mother-in-law and father-in-law. My answer to your question about Gaza is that Lord Michael Farmer, a courageous British peer who happens to be Candace Owens' father-in-law, issued one of the most robust and beautiful defenses of Israel that any of us have read since October 7th.